Okay, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to start the last session, which is the broadest topic, has the shortest time, and the largest number of speakers. So we have a challenge. The challenge that I'm asking each of our panelists to follow, to allow a little bit of time for ideas, is to pick just one idea and in 3 minutes explain it to us. So we'll have 12 ideas plus whatever the audience has after that. But before we do that, I'd like to call upon Kevin Fong from the University College of London to introduce the topic. Kevin?
Thank you. I'm going to try and be brief because we have such little time. I'm very honoured to introduce this very distinguished panel, and I've enjoyed the sessions from this conference very much, and the very important stories of how we all got to where we have arrived at in human spaceflight. The first thing I remember, and the thing that got me into all of this, was watching the Apollo-Soyuz test project as a young child, and that collaboration. My parents woke me up in the middle of the night to watch that on TV. I tried to explain the excitement of that to my 6-year-old son recently, and he was much more interested in the fact that not all TVs were always colour, and they weren't always flat, and then you had to wait for them to warm up before you could see pictures. So I didn't quite score there. But having watched that, I did wonder what the route to the future was and how I would get to where I wanted to get to, or somewhere nearby. And it was very clear to me that that had to be education. Now, my mum always used to point at the guy who walked past our house called Sven. He was from Sweden, and when I was 4 years old, he looked like he was 10 feet tall. And she said, he's got a degree, he's going places. And I still don't know what degree it was or where he went to university, but he did look like he was going places. And so I guess this whole session is about what the bridge to the future is. We face tremendous problems at this time economically. We have some uncertainties in our programs of exploration, but it's clear that education is a great part of how all of us get to the future and assure our future. The programs of exploration we've described at this conference will be prosecuted by people whose careers will start when ours are over. So I think that is the importance of it all. We explore because we must, but we get the greatest advantage of that if along the way we also educate people and collaborate internationally. And I think our very distinguished panel are going to talk a little bit about how we meet those challenges and how we find our way to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Space and education, there's a mutual dependency between the two. Space enables increased interest in science and technology education. Education enables space activities. So how are we doing using this mutuality, and what should we be doing? Each of the panelists has seen the program, which has addressed certain themes, and without further ado, I'll call upon David Alexander to start off.
Thank you for inviting me here. I have the advantage of having rushed here for my son's baseball game, so I'm completely unprepared, so giving one idea makes it easier for me. The one idea I would probably say that covers a lot of the things that we're talking about is multidisciplinarity. I think in working in this community here in Houston, where we have one of the, if not the largest medical center, we have obviously NASA Johnson Space Center, and we have, we're essentially the energy capital of the world. The kind of problems that come up that we'd like to solve and the kind of problems that we give our students are sort of all based in here. So it's a really rich environment for that. So the three kind of sub-themes on that, one of the things that I learned on robotic space missions is how much hand in hand the engineering and the science go together. I think that's really important because engineers and scientists go for problems for different reasons. They ask different questions, and they approach the answers or the solutions to those questions in different ways. And working together, which is what they need to do for the space program in particular, there's so many different lessons learned, and the sort of richness that comes out of that for solving the problems and how the problems are solved and what new questions get raised, I think are very important. The other thing is that one of the things I've been talking to my colleagues here at Rice about as we're becoming more active in the human space program is just that challenge of putting one person in an extreme environment like Mars takes more people in this room. I mean, you all come from institutions probably with very number of people looking at those issues. Those challenges and being able to solve those kinds of problems are what sets the stage for the future generation. It's not just about, little things like understanding the sun, which is what I try and do. I mean, it's hard enough, but actually putting a human on Mars, for example, biological problems, engineering problems, scientific problems, radiation is something that was mentioned earlier. So that would fit into there too. And then that brings me back to this notion of this multidisciplinarity. I think that a human in space and solving those problems has a huge impact on how you deal with related, maybe not analogs isn't the right word in this case, but related problems here on the Earth: radiation, bone loss, osteoporosis, mining. Someone's going off to mine an asteroid. Well, how do you do that? Well, you start thinking about how we do stuff on the Earth. And so bringing all that multidisciplinarity together, I think, is the key. And where space has a huge advantage in stimulating the right kinds of education. And I'll stop with that.
Thank you, David. We'll move on. We'll take questions afterwards at the end. Chris Barber of ISSET.
Hi, my idea, I'd actually written down quite a few, so I thought of an idea that covered them all. My idea is that space and space exploration and the people that do it are a fantastic inspiration and motivator to the young people everywhere across the planet. They're an inspiration for them getting up and thinking, I can do that too. They're an inspiration for them studying and wanting to do the things that we need in society. And they're an inspiration for people working together. I got an example of somebody who wrote to us, came on one of our programs, who wrote to me, and then I'll follow this up. I don't know whether you remember me, but nobody in my family had been to university. I never thought I would go to university, and I'm at Imperial College, and I'm about to get a first. He's now working for a big company in London, and he's got his company to donate money to bring young people here. People then say to me, and I hate this, they say, oh, well, if you can change just one life, it's worthwhile. Well, that's not the case, because there are millions of lives out there to be changed. And the people in this room and the people you know can change those lives. How do we do it? Ron's sitting there. Ron was kind enough to come over to the UK. We spent 3 days visiting schools and children. And in 3 days, Ron talked to over 5,000 youngsters. You say 5,000 youngsters, doesn't that make this rather impersonal? Well, what we do is, and Ron was really kind enough to work on this, is that all the youngsters come up, and in small groups they have a photograph, they have a chance to something to take away, they have a chance to have a brief chat. So you do the mass and you personalize it. Ron had to take a lot of medication after that trip, actually, which is true. Ashok, who's here, we've just done a program, and this is how space can reach out. We've just done a program here for about 35 Indian school principals and owners, and they look after round about 200, maybe 250,000 young people in India. Only the draw of space could bring them here. What are the great advantages of that? Well, Covey in his 7 Habits of Successful People says you need to understand before you can be understood. We need to understand the Indians, they need to understand us, and before we can create that understanding, then we're not going to be able to work together successfully. Those people have been changed. I bumped into Alvin and told him that we had this group over. Alvin was kind enough to come over and speak to them. He gave them an unforgettable evening that they will tell everybody and influence their schools from. The price he had to pay was he had to spend much of the evening with me and drink far more than he would normally have chosen to do. I talked to Sasha Titova this morning, and she sort of changed what would have been my focus on this in terms of she's got a brilliant program in Star City, which is about using how can space and space exploration get people together to improve our environment. And she said to me, but this is hard. It's very hard getting support. It's very hard getting people to give us any funding for these things. So I've got an example just to sort of help address this. It's best to look, if you're into space education and you don't work for a major organization, it's best to run what I'd call a mixed economy. We have a program called Mission Discovery. The next one is going to be at King's College, and we have David Green, who's here and is actually one of the scientists that'll be on there. We have young people get the chance to work with astronauts, astronaut trainers, world-renowned scientists. James Tour is going to video conference in throughout the program, and the young people do a range of skills from working in teams, leadership, the environment of space, how do you create and how do you innovate, budgeting, planning, presentation, and they come up with an idea that we'll take away and build and put on the International Space Station for them. People say, how do you fund it? We fund it, and this is the point of this, in a mixed economy sort of way. Some parents can afford to come and help us pay for what we need to do it, and we give them the opportunity. We go to other charitable bodies and we ask them to support youngsters to come on the program, and when we've got enough money to pay for everything we need to do, then we give the rest of those places away to people in more deprived areas. So my advice to anyone doing this kind of work is look at a range of things and a range of funding things and just be creative. She asked me because we've been doing this work for about 15 years, for some tips. Well, the only tips I really have is stay focused and remember the job is to inspire young people. Remember that our job also is to prepare people for a world of increased global partnership, and then stick at it. You sometimes have to take no for an answer, but you don't have to take it the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Alvin Drew, Astronaut. First of our four on the panel.
I think my thought for the day is salesmanship. The old saying about things being 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. And I think if we do that, hand out that 10% inspiration to people who are coming through the education system, they'll provide that 90% perspiration on their own. One of the things I've always maintained is that if you can ignite someone's imagination, I defy you to extinguish it, though God knows we try. So what I challenge you all to is premeditated acts of social arson. Light folks up, the kids up, and get out of the way. Help them, aid them, abet them as they go on their journey. I know I caught fire about 45 years ago, and boy, I just tortured my poor teachers. Their job was to answer my questions, and as best they could, and hang in there with me. What are the barriers? And I talk about putting out that fire. First off, when I think about the aviation and aerospace industry back in the early part of the 20th century, it was led by people who simply created capital to achieve a vision. You think about people like Lockheed, think like Jack Northrop. They had a mission in life, and they used business to create the capital to go put that vision forward. And I would maintain today that it's exactly backwards. One says, let's generate some kind of vision thing so we can generate profits. And so you have people who are in the industry right now, engineers and scientists, who are simply a commodity. And I'm afraid that's not inspiring for me. If my job to go out and just go out there and help somebody help their bottom line, their profit, I'd rather go do something else. So we need to get out of that mindset. What is the vision? And keep people working towards a vision. And sometimes that's more than just a quarterly report. Next, the education system. There are times in college I felt like, who was the kid? Ralph Macchio and the Karate Kid, where they didn't really explain to me what I was doing. It was, sand the floor, wax on, wax off. Okay, what is this leading to? Somehow I needed to deserve this education that I was getting from them, and they weren't necessarily trying to motivate me. boy, nothing turned me off quicker. You put the carrot out in front of me, here's what the end state is, and you tell me how what I'm learning today leads to that, and don't just make me leave that as an exercise to the scholar. Sometimes it takes a little bit more leadership in that. And it's something like, some people just felt like, you need to come and deserve this. No, you need to deserve me as a person who's part of your industry. You know, no matter who, not me personally, but just me as a person trying to learn it. Second, what I've seen now is we've managed to denature a lot of our education and a lot of our discovery and education in the system. Too many lawyers and too many, insurance accountants and things like that have gotten in there that we can't do things that are dangerous. What was this, a book out called the book, great big book of Dangerous Science for Boys or something like that? Well, that was normal science back then. We used to blow things up and burn things up and do all kinds of horrible things that would make people scream in this day and age. And so they've got these experiments out there that I look at. We're going to put some dye in water and watch it dissipate or something like that. Boy, watch them go to sleep. There's got to be a certain amount of, intrigue, even if it means it's slightly dangerous or just slightly bad. I remember learning Spanish simply because I wanted to know the 4-letter words in Spanish. And that was inspiration enough for me. So what works? Things that resonate. You know, exploration, when we first put Sputnik up, when we first put people like our first astronauts up, when we first went to the moon, wasn't a hard sell. The countries that were doing it, the Soviet Union, the US, these are people who were very expansive. They understood expanding frontiers and borders, and they were very competitive, and they were competing with each other. So the idea that we're going to go to the moon because it's hard didn't take a whole lot of salesmanship. I mean, people got that immediately. Second, the vision, and I talked about the fact, are we creating money in industry to achieve a vision? Are we creating industries or creating visions to go ahead and put money in the pockets of our industry? I think we have it backwards. Remember that in the end, inspiration is something that is visceral and not cerebral. Does that mean it's going to be all just, fire and smoke and shiny objects out there to keep the people out there interested who have short attention spans? No. But you should ask yourself when you get up every day, if I'm part of this industry, what is it that's cool about my job? If I had to explain that to a 5th grader or a 7th grader, and I couldn't do that, maybe I'm not in the right job. Just remember, to inspire other people, you must first be inspired yourself. I'll leave you with that thought.
Thank you very much, Alvin. Francesco Fusco from the Boeing Company.
Yeah, I'm actually here representing the Foundation for International Space Education. That's a non-profit charity organization which was built around a program that we now call USS, United Space School. And like many space schools around, is focused on using the passion of, how was defined earlier, the mystery of space to drive the career and encourage the students to go to a STEM career or science in general career. What is unique about us is that we do it in an international, multicultural environment. How do we do that? We invite every year about 50 students, 45, 50 students from 50 different countries. They come here in Houston, where we use the University of Houston Clear Lake as our facilities to give them a class. The main purpose is, of course, space, is building a mission on Mars. And I'm not going to go into detail because we don't have time now, but I'll be happy to talk with everyone and stop by later. But the students are divided in groups with the skill sets, and each group and team has to do certain things. The program is very well thought. It's not just about the space mission, which is amazing what the students can come, and the final presentation are always very impressive. But it's also looking at the different nationality and how to share. Each student is considered ambassador of his country, and he has to share culture, and from the food to songs or anything that is belong to his culture. The program is taught after the school, so after the university. They have many activities in which there's team building and openness and sharing culture. And that's, I think, the key here. Collaboration, international cooperation, and sharing knowledge and achievement around the world. It's always been, in my mind, a great idea to do things, especially in space where I work all my life in. But now I really end to believe that is the only way. It's, with all looking around and all the resources kind of fading on us, the only way to do things and accomplish great results is to collaborate. And we do have the resources if we put all together. So starting this idea and this in these students, it's really important. And you know, being and looking at the results that this program is having all of the years. I've been involved now 7 years with this program, but the program goes back in '94. The alumni, they keep coming back. They comes and we get them as mentor in each team, and it's amazing how they describe how this program changed their life and life of people around them. So I'll be happy to answer any question, and I'm happy to have some help. Actually, there's some, take this advantage, I probably shouldn't do that, but one of the things that is bothering me that among the nation that are major contributor for this International Space Station, the only country that right now we don't have is Japan. And since there's JAXA representative here, I'll be happy to, if they can help us to a contact so we can bring students from Japan as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, Francesco, for that insight. We'll move on to Alex Gabino, BCM SPR.
Hi, and I'm coming from a slightly different perspective as a young person on the panel. I was asked to give my story and the perspective from the student side as opposed to new ideas on how to instill a program, or I'd be happy to throw some comments out there too. I actually started in Switzerland in high school. When I was graduating, I had this opportunity to come to Houston to study physics. Of course, like most of you, I was always interested and passionate about space, and so I jumped on the opportunity to come here. It was only years later, though, during my MD PhD training here at Baylor College of Medicine, that I really found an inroad into the space community, and it started there, meeting not only the experts in the field, but also mentors and role models that have since, helped me get to my goals, and ended up with me being able to attend here. My colleagues, however, those I've met through all my training and in public forums, can really be divided into two groups. Those that are really passionate about space and really want to find a way to get in, and a much larger group that just wonders, what is a space program, what do they do, and where are they? Just to start with that latter group, I think the big problem right now is that the space program is, for lack of a easy way of putting it, is struggling to find a direction. There's no clear goal in mind, and that's actually what we've heard yesterday and this morning, that the most important driving force behind any effective space program is really a mission statement, a goal, a target, something that even though not everybody agrees to, at least they can work together towards to obtain. The other thing I've noticed too is when talking to all these people is that this is not an opposition to the space program. Lots of people, and I've noticed, especially in the space community, there's sort of this adversarial establishment between those that support the space program and those who don't. Really, people don't just seem to know that much about the space program. Once they're inspired about, or just even given some examples of what the space program does, they tend to support it much more effectively. So I think that there's this sort of straw man opposition against this idea of an opposition to the space program that's really just ignorance. And really, it's even benign ignorance. It's not oppositional. The only thing they see, from stepping into their shoes, is government leaders that are arguing and changing where the space program should go or should not go over and over again, and then arguing over what actually ends up being a few $1 billion, which in the big perspective of things is not that much. It's less than half a cent on the dollar on the US federal budget. The other thing they see is the end of the shuttle. Time and time again, they've asked me, it's like, oh, you're interested in NASA? Didn't that shut down? Didn't they retire the shuttle and everybody go home? They don't see the immense international cooperation that we see in this room right now with the ISS program. That's just not brought to the public media. However, there is hope, and there's lots of people that are, unfortunately not enough, but there is a big group of people that are really striving to inspire the next generation. Some of them do take the public platform, at least in the US, very effectively. Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of them. Miles O'Brien, they are always in the public forum. And then even in this room, we have astronaut Massimino and Leroy Chow, who have been very vocal on the public forum, not inside space medicine, not even inside the science, technology, engineering, and math field, but really out to the community at large. And when you start explaining to people that just in the US, more money is spent on buying lipstick than on the space program, people really start thinking, again about it and think, oh, well, maybe it's not such a bad idea to fund it, or even increase funding for the space program, get somewhere quick. So on that side, I encourage all of you to really just take out the platform, make an effort, really a personal effort. Just think to yourself, what can I do to really get out there? Although you might not feel that way day to day, you're really on a position to really inspire people. What you do by just being present in this room, you've been selected as a group of people that really do things that inspire the next generation. Lots of people would be eager to hear about you, what you do every day, what it is that you do, how you do it, and what you see in the future. And with things like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and all the social media that some of you have used effectively, it's really at very little to no cost in terms of getting the word out there. And that really inspires the next generation. Now, the second group, those that really want to be part of the space program, and hopefully by talking to large groups, you inspire some more, you'll get attentive ears. Once you get that group of interested students, encourage them in their interests. Many of them will come in from different fields and with completely unrelated interests, maybe within space medicine, but still encourage them. Learn a little bit about what is outside of your own field. So if it's in space medicine, learn a little bit about the engineering side of things, the research in life support systems, or other points where you can actually forward them and point them towards avenues where they can meet their own mentors and their own role models, and so they can really flourish and really become the next generation of aerospace engineers, flight surgeons, astronauts, or whatever it is that they'd like to do. And remember, each person that you do talk to will go out and actually talk to a few dozen, if not 100 people. I had an opportunity through Baylor College of Medicine to go to Canada on a 1-month analog mission. It was a relatively small endeavor in the large part of things, but I've given that lecture a few times. I've talked to over 100 people about it, and all these students just keep coming and asking me, so what is it that you did? Wow, and how do you get there, and how do I get to do that? And they really just inspires people. So every person that you, from your position, can inspire will go out and inspire another 100 or so that will come in and really flourish and contribute to the field. So if we want to give, so just to give the sort of 2 or 3 different messages of what to do, I would say go out and inspire the next generation. Really get out and talk. Use any platform you're comfortable with to do so. And open the door. Once they answer, open the door, let them in. Get them to any small project they can contribute. Anything they can help out will make a big difference in their lives and in the lives of those around them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Doug King, tell us from the museum's point of view.
Thank you, Alex. I couldn't have asked for a better introduction, and I wanted to build on what you said and what Chris and Alvin said about how important it is that all of you are telling your story to the young people that we hope to turn into somebody like Alex. When he describes himself as a young person, I think of him as a successful result of intervention that starts in about elementary school and is real important at every step along the way. So I want to give you a platform to get involved. I come from a large museum in Seattle, the Museum of Flight. We tell the story of the first 100 years of aviation, but we understand that we need to inspire and involve those people that will write the story of the second 100 years. Education is our focus. 140,000 young people a year participate in our programs, ranging from an overnight program to a 400-student high school that's being built on our campus. But when we recently got involved in focusing on space, on what comes next, on what's happened in the last 30 years, we found a very interesting thing. We're the future home of the full fuselage trainer. Any of you who have been to space and trained on that down in Building 9, it's in pieces now, on its way to Seattle. It will be reassembled by this fall. And around it, we want to explain to the public what happened during the last 30 years and what happens next. Because we did a survey. We've had a wonderful exhibit from Goddard to Apollo for the last 10 years or so. And when we asked people that had just gone through that exhibit what they thought about space, the summary was that they thought the most important thing that had ever happened was landing on the moon. They, as Alex said, thought things were pretty much over because the shuttle's being retired. They had a very vague understanding of that there was a space station and what it was doing, but they had a really positive view of Star Trek. They thought that had absolutely no difficulty with a long-term view of the future that looks like Star Trek and absolutely no understanding of how we might ever get there. The good news is we found if we give them at all a platform to stand on to have that understanding, if we explain what the space station's doing, if we explain the kind of research you're doing that affects their lives, the reaction is, wow, that's great news, I didn't know that. So what it's told all of us in the museum world is we haven't done our job. Those of us in the education world, we haven't done our job educating not just young people, but their teachers and parents. I had a high school principal say to me the other day, why would we talk to kids about space? They'll never be able to go. It's our job to change his mind. And to do that, we need stories like I've heard here for the last couple of days. Thank you to George Abbey, who's a trustee of our organization, and John Brannigan, who came with me, who chairs our space committee, who take this seriously enough to say, go meet the real people who are doing the job day to day, listen to their stories, and then tell their stories. It's not so much about the spacecraft. It's not so much about the hardware in aviation. One of our speakers last night said it's about how it changed the world, and then giving people the sense of how they can change the world in their future. Our gallery will not just be in Seattle. We've formed a consortium with my colleagues around the country that are facing exactly the same issues. All of the museums that will have an orbiter, all of the NASA visitor centers, and many small museums in a consortium called Science Beyond the Boundaries that includes 160 museums with 60 million visitors a year. We want to tell your story. And all of us understand that if we can do that, it will inspire young people to be involved and help their parents understand why that chart that our one speaker today talked about needs to probably be more than 0.5% a year. And so I think it's in all of our self-interest to be involved, as Alex had suggested. When people understand how what you do affects their daily lives and the opportunity for their kids, they are out there to be just as supportive as they have ever been in the past. I was at a conference the other day where a leader challenged us to think, what will people write about it? What will historians write about 1,000 years from now that's happening today? You know, probably not who wins this presidential election, probably not who wins the Super Bowl or who the latest singer is, but they'll write about this is the time when humans first left the Earth. It's such an honor to be able to tell the story of those of you who are making that happen, those of you who are creating history, and that's what inspires young people. They want to go with you. So join us. We're glad to talk to you about how we can tell your story in our museum and others around the country and be engaged with that next generation that will follow you.
Thank you very much, Doug. Oleg Kotov, cosmonaut.
Еще раз добрый день.
Good afternoon again. I have this wonderful privilege. I hope everybody has their headsets on. I hope everybody's ready. I have an amazing privilege and a possibility to speak to you again, and I'd like to take this opportunity to speak about education. And I want to join in on the previous speakers' messages. Everybody who spoke before me is right on the money, and we do have a shared understanding of the issues and the questions that we're faced with respect to the educating the younger generations. What I would like to focus your attention on is several additional aspects. First of all, it's been rightly mentioned before, there's only several platforms or bases, rather, that serve to propel education, i.e. educations, space training facilities, cosmonaut and astronaut training facilities, which would be the most obvious facilities to have training sessions, meetings, tours, any and all activity that's targeted towards motivating professional and educational inspirations for people of all generations. But regrettably, I have to say that each of these centers, each of these platforms, no matter how much enthusiasm these people have, they work in a standalone mode. Everybody has their own programs. Everybody's got their own educational training flows. They've got their own methods and techniques. They've got their own platforms. And when I meet people from all walks of life and all kinds of centers, we start realizing that everybody is in on the same action. Everybody's doing the same, be it on the local or a global basis. Everybody is in the business of the same type of educational programs. So if a coordination center of some sort, a voluntary basis, non-governmental entity that will be coordinating these multiple efforts that have the same goal, the same objective, that will be coordinating and interfacing between all of these centers, all of these platforms. There's a few of them, but there's a handful. If that kind of center would exist, it would be able to promote space more efficiently at that, using the resources that we've got on the international level. Moving on, I want to talk to you about something else. I think the cornerstone, the main platform that we've got for propelling education is the International Space Station. It goes without saying. There do come up educational programs every once in a while, but nothing is on a permanent basis. Unfortunately, there's no system to the method. There's no systematic educational program based on the ISS. But what else would be more efficient than demonstrating the achievements of real orbital flight to inspire and educate? What else if not the ISS? Also, the international partners do have their own sporadic educational programs or bits and pieces thereof. But there's no system to it. Once again, I think it would make the most sense to have some kind of an integrative effort and to have an educational program be an entity in and of itself. Some kind of a global educational program will be one of the major experiments that would target using the station applications to achieve those goals. And then thirdly, and lastly, we're saying all these good, inspirational things about motivating and inspiring younger generations to get them involved in the space industry, to get them motivated and get them engaged and involved and committed to space, to have them look up in the sky and be dreaming about space applications and applying themselves to those. But look, even when you're motivated, instead of making that lifelong commitment to space industry, one is often clueless as to where to go and where to apply, and what school to even seek out, and what kind of an education you would get, and what kind of profession you would end up obtaining as a result of that education. All I'm saying is that most of the people involved in space control loop, I mean both the training experts and the mission control support experts, and there's no single point educational center that will be training these professions. In other words, all the centers are solving the same exact set of issues but using different educational resources. And you've got young generations that have the most basic starting educational skills. They come and join a center, and they basically go through a whole different educational process. It's uniform. It's not formal, but basically they get educated how to work on consoles at a mission control center, how to be an instructor, even though you could be an engineer by education, but then you become an instructor, a teacher. So you've got an engineer turning teacher. So they have to get retrained, re-educated, really. And so I'm thinking in the nearest future we'll be running up against a wall of problems. We'll need to create some kind of an educational center that will be educating and training very specific space industry specialists for very specific applications, such an academy or a university or a department, you name it, it'll all work. It would be a good springboard to start materializing the younger generation's dreams. In other words, we'll be answering their question as to what to do to get involved in space industry, to create, to design, to build space systems. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the thoughtful comments, as they all have been so far. I'll move on to Steve Mackwell from LPI. Yeah, if you would.
I run a modest-sized institute that focuses more on robotic planetary science exploration. We have a lot of education work that we do as well, and the education working, providing education and public outreach to NASA and to the community at large is obviously a great and a very important thing to do. Last fall, we were informed that one of the programs that we ran, the undergraduate student research program, which puts undergraduate students from across the country into NASA centers to spend a period of time working closely with NASA people, was cancelled. Money just was taken from the program, and the reason was that, that budgets were being cut. And so one of the takeaway messages I would leave with you today is let's not keep doing what we seem to do every time money gets tight, and that is kill the education programs. So these are the seed corn of tomorrow. The role of NASA and the reason that we explore the universe can be justified in many ways, and one of our key roles is that as scientists, as engineers, one of our roles is to make new scientists and engineers and encourage people to fill those roles going forward. They help make our country strong. They build our future in the areas of technology and science and engineering. These are areas that, in many respects, NASA and the agencies in foreign countries all provide huge incentives and insight and inspiration in a way that very, very few other industries or organizations can, to draw people into the fields that are critical to our own futures. The educational role is an incredibly important one to us, and we have to sustain that. And we're in a position, doing what we do, whether it's working on ISS, sending robotic missions into outer space, sending humans beyond low Earth orbit. These are all very inspiring things that we do that can draw people forward and strengthen our nations into the future. I don't always say that we do it very well. Certainly, there's more that we can do. I think one of the best examples is the Hubble Space Telescope, which has a tremendous program of education and public outreach. Other areas like planetary sciences and perhaps the human programs don't necessarily do as good a role at engaging young people, and I would, as the other speakers have said, encourage that we do more of that. Try and do more to reach into the hearts and minds of young people going forward. One of the advantages of being late on the list here, of course, is that you get to cherry pick what's left. And so I haven't heard a lot about international connections in terms of education and connections for young people. And so I wanted to say a couple of words about that too. We recently developed a cooperation with an institute in India, where we bring across a couple of interns from India every year, a couple of undergraduates. They come and they work with us just for the summer, and they go back to India at the end of that time. And we've only been doing this a couple of years. And we have got such good response from the Indian Space Agency in terms of they're taking these young people and they're finding them to be tremendously useful in terms of the additional career opportunities that are available to them after being exposed to the research environment and the activities within this country and the space program here. I think that the internationalization, particularly with young people, is a tremendously important thing that we should sponsor and do more to facilitate. Bringing over young people to work in our environment here, I think, is very important. As money gets more difficult to get, as missions of all sorts get more expensive to fly, internationalization is becoming much, much more important for us in terms of how we do missions. Getting young people who are going to be the leaders in their countries' space programs of the future to work together with us and each other going forward, I think, is a very important role that we need to play. And so the sorts of activities that George Abbey has been promoting for quite a while, and that connect young people in particular in foreign countries with the space program throughout the world, especially here. I think are tremendously important, and that would be my takeaway message.
Thank you very much, Steve. Call upon Mike Massimino, astronaut.
Hello. First, I want to apologize for not getting the dress code correctly. I actually came from my family picnic at my mom's retirement community. So I was trying to dress for both a picnic and for a conference, and I think I fell a little bit short for the conference. So I apologize. But speaking of the retirement community, I did give a talk there for my mom and her friends last week. And if you want to find some people that are interested in the space program, go to retirement community. They really were very, very interested, just as much as any group of students you might find. So it was really fun.
They're all voters.
They're all vote, yes, and they will vote too. You know, hearing everyone talk about inspiration, how you can inspire kids, I think I am, like I think just about everybody here, was a product of what inspiration can do to want you to achieve an education and pursue a dream of being a part of something that you really love. In my case was the space program, like I think it was for a lot of people in this room. But in my case, I think I'm an especially good example because I wasn't the brightest kid in the world when I was young. I remember I went back to my my elementary school after I was an astronaut for a couple of years, and I got invited back to give a talk. And my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Oko, was there. She was still at this school, and I had lunch with her. And you know, it was very, very nice. You know, they decorated the school, and it was a lot of fun. But she said she was having breakfast with her kids, and her kids were, you know, younger, probably 8, 9 years old. And her son asked her, you know, she said, "I'm going to have lunch with one of my former students who, you know, who's an astronaut now." And he said to her, "Well, you know, he must have been really smart, Mom. You know, if he had." And she said, "Well, if he was smart, if he was really smart, I probably would have remembered, you know, because I'm sure he was bright, but I don't think he was really that smart." But she said to him, "That's not always what is most important. You know, what's important is to have something you really enjoy and to have some inspiration in your life." And that's what happened to me. And I see Chuck Oman there at MIT. I mean, Chuck, I was a ham and egger there, right? I mean, I was able to get, somehow that inspiration took me all the way through grad school. So, oh, there's Larry over there. Okay, yeah, Larry had me in class. He can attest to it anyway. Well, your memories are selective. But I think it's a testament, I think, for all of us to remember that how having a dream can get you through the rough times, the tough classes, whether you run into them in high school, grad school, wherever it might be. So thanks, Larry. But you know, for me, the space program, seeing Neil Armstrong walk on the moon when I was 6 years old, made an impression on me that I still think about today, and inspired me to get an education. I like math and science, and so I think all of us can use ourselves as examples of what you can do when you can inspire, when people are inspired. For the past few years, as an astronaut, I've been speaking to schools like a lot of my colleagues here in this room, and like a lot of us have, talking about what we're doing and about the space shuttle program and about the space station program. And now, you know, we mentioned how the space shuttle program is shutting down. A lot of people, even here in Houston, think that NASA is closing up and the space program is ending. And you know, I wonder, oh, geez, how are we going to inspire these younger people to achieve or get the education like the people in this room did, being inspired by these great events like a moon landing and the space shuttle program and building the space station and so on. And for the past few months, I've been lucky enough to have this great experience, and I'll have it for another 10 months or so, of working here with David Alexander with the Rice Space Institute. So I'm on loan from NASA here at Rice. And it's been great. And one of the best things about it is I get to meet students. And the students are so excited about the space program. I don't remember, I mean, I know I was excited, but I think they're just excited as I was as a young person getting my education today. Back then, as they are today. They're very, very excited in the space program, about the space program, about what the possibilities are, what's going on on the space station, what might happen with these commercial companies, what might happen beyond exploration beyond low Earth orbit, and they're starving for this for information, for this opportunity. And it kind of surprised me. I didn't expect that much excitement to be there, because I thought, well, you know, maybe it's going to wind down now, the excitement phase, but it's not. It's still there. So that's I think my message to you is that the audience will be very, very receptive. And seeing it firsthand here at Rice, I know that for a fact that there are lots of young people interested in finding out what's possible. And so all these opportunities we have with social media and outreach, I think if you're able to engage in any of those things, you'll find a very, very receptive audience. The kids are still as excited now as we were when it was our time to get an education. Thanks.
Good, thanks very much, Mike. Barbara Morgan, combination of astronaut and education, space and education personified.
Good afternoon. Well, I keep thinking about how we learn so much from each other, and that's what I love about this summit, is that we have an opportunity to learn from each other. And a couple things I want to just point out. If we can remember that all of the things that we've talked about the last couple days, it all works better if we can start young. So if we can have our young people, along with their teachers and along with our university folks who are learning to be teachers, learn how to work together on teams, learn how to solve big problems like designing a mission to Mars or coming up with a top quality education program on the that can be that we can use the International Space Station for, the better off we're all going to be, and doing it by learning from each other. So just one example of that is a program that Mr. Abbey started years ago at the NASA Johnson Space Center, and that's a high school aerospace scholars program. And we out in the hinterlands of Idaho, where it's very, very rural, have been able, and we do not have a space center in Idaho. We probably never will, but we've been able to take that program and have our students and teachers and student teachers who are learning to be teachers, and our biomedical scientists and our biomedical research engineers and our business and industry work together to design Mission to Mars in teams, and it's working really, really well at the local level. We get to use the excitement of space exploration and get our young people and their teachers engaged in science and technology and engineering and mathematics at the very local area. The only thing I'm disappointed about is when the teams decide on their parameters for their mission, they tend to choose a national crew rather than an international crew. So that's something we definitely need to work on, and I hope to be able to, that we can work with all of you on that. I guess what I'd like to throw out, because this is a policy summit and a summit of ideas, is we've got a lot of expertise in here, in this room and beyond, and Oleg, I agree with you that it would be wonderful if we had some kind of organizing, a central organization who could make all this happen. Because we don't have that yet, what I do think we can do is have a committee that can work together to take the best of all of these different education programs that we do have in our various organizations and come up with something that we can do together on ISS or a simulated mission to Mars. Just like to leave you with that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Jeff Sutton.
Right, thanks very much. Well, in response, Carl, to your request about one idea concerning education, I would submit that there are many opportunities for innovation. Let me give 4 examples. At Baylor College of Medicine, the Board of Trustees approved a new Center for Space Medicine as an academic unit, and one of the tasks that new entity was going to do is to create a space medicine track, the first of its kind anywhere in the world for undergraduate medical students. There's a lot of interest being in Houston among the medical community, and we saw an opportunity, therefore, to combine space and medicine at the undergraduate level. We started in 2008 and 9, put forward an elective that we offered to the first-year students and captured 1/3 of the first-year medical school class. We then went into the next year and created a more advanced elective for the second-year students and re-offered the first-year elective, and so on and so forth. And we're just now completing the 4th-year elective, and on Tuesday evening, this coming Tuesday, our first graduate, Alex Gabino, is going to be receiving his MD with special recognition in space medicine. And there's tremendous excitement among the undergraduates. A second example of opportunity to be innovative is with NSBRI. We did not want to be divisive among the space medicine community here in Houston nor anywhere. So what NSPRI has done is to create a program with the Aerospace Medicine Residency Program at UTMB. We have a space medicine clinical research training program where an award is given to the residency director to administer research opportunities and grants to the residents at his or her discretion. It's actually Dr. Jennings who's the PI on that grant. And what that really does is it enhances the caliber of the next generation of flight surgeons, because most residency training programs these days offer research opportunities for the residents. And one great thing about that program is that it attracts applicants and residents from all over the world. For example, I just went out to dinner with a whole bunch of the young aerospace medicine doctors who graduated from this program. One of them was here, Sharmi Watkins, yesterday, that participated in this program. Yale Bars from Israel. So it's not solely a national program, and it really has impact, I believe, on the international space medicine community. A third example I talked a little bit about last year, and that has to do with an international postdoc exchange program in space life sciences between US and Russia that would be orchestrated Science Institute to Science Institute between NSPRI and IBMP. Well, when I reported last year, I had stated that we had sought and gained approval from the joint working group and that the program was going to kick off. I don't see them here today, but yesterday, two postdocs from Ludmila Barankova's lab were present in the audience. They are now doing well into their postdocs. They actually started in August of last summer and are making great strides, one in cardiovascular physiology and the other one in bioengineering. When NSPRI released its national release, its solicitation for postdoctoral applications, which is open to the entire community, we put in an opportunity for the recipient U.S. institution to be able to send a postdoc to IBMP. Again, lots of opportunities for innovation. And the fourth example that I give really picks up on collaboration, and that is that we were actually inundated as a space biomedical institute with inquiries from a lot of engineering students from across the country and actually internationally for opportunities for young aerospace engineers and other engineers to spend some time with individuals who had expertise in medicine and space life science. The new generation of engineers is very cognizant of their friends and colleagues who are specializing in areas in biology and in medicine, and the great advances that are being made. And so we created a program called a Space Biomedical Engineering Apprenticeship Program, where engineers come to NSBRI and they are supported by industry. So it's a collaboration between an academic consortium and industry. And what NSBRI does is to provide the academic lectures to these students who are in the physical sciences to enable, again, a new generation to come forward, whereas presumably new designs of space vehicles and aircraft go forward, that the human is factored in very, very early in the process. So those are 4 examples. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Jeff. Our final speaker is going to be Ashok Pandey. We've had a couple of references to cooperation with India, and now we'll hear directly. He comes from the Alton International School.
Thank you, George, Abby, and Chris Barber, for providing me this unique opportunity to be here amongst this audience gathering. I come from a country where the first man, and perhaps so far the last, Squadron Leader Rakesh Sharma, went into this space when I was a young child. And when I was in my early 20s, I was told that India was the 4th largest as far as the pool of scientists and technologists were concerned. And now in my 50s, I find that we have slided many notches below that 4th position. So in the context of that, the Government of India and the educationists, policymakers have taken a series of steps as to how to encourage children to take careers and interest in science and technology, and particularly in space science. And in that context, I can tell you that today there are a huge amount of enthusiasm among our children to come to NASA, to see it, and perhaps to understand that mysteries of space and things like that. And that is how, by a chance meeting with Chris Barber, we came out with an idea that if these young children need to be inspired, perhaps the educational leaders, teachers, principals, they need to be inspired first. And that is how this group of 35 educational leaders were brought here to Houston. We were here for almost a week. We spent one full day in the Johnson Space Center. We were also taken to NBL, where we were lucky, and it was almost God sent, that Sunita Williams was practicing in the pool, and as we were passing through the corridors, it was time for her to finish her practice and pull herself out of the pool, and she could recognize the Indian faces from her practice suit, and she waved at us. And I think that was a unique experience, and as Indians, we can never forget that. Even as I'm talking to you, ladies and gentlemen, hundreds of our students are passing through the galleries of Johnson Space Center in complete awe and bewilderment, and that is going to do a lot of good to inspire them. I will also give reference to David Alexander when he says that space education has a kind of mutuality as far as science education is concerned, and as far as encouraging students to take up science and technology as a career is concerned. And I think there is a need in this world to make a balance. When there was a time as young children, we had a preference only for sciences and technology, and the times changed when there was a complete shift to almost another extreme, that liberal arts and commerce and business and things like that became a prime interest among the students. But then we found that this was causing some kind of imbalance. And now there is a course correction amongst us as far as my country, India, is concerned. And therefore, there is a special emphasis, a special impetus, and a special encouragement for the students to take up careers in science and technology. Many people whose names I could not recollect, but they have talked about internationalization of space education program, and they are getting students from India. I am one, I'm based in Delhi, and I'll be absolutely delighted if anybody has any interest in bringing Indian students here. I can surprise them by bringing droves of students here. Chris Barber was very kind. He has arranged for us many video conferencing through the astronauts, and we have seen the impact it has on our students. Earlier, 10 years before, I'm a teacher for the last 30 years. 10 years before, if I asked any students what careers you would like to choose, none of them would talk about space science. But today, I can tell you with absolute certainty, at least 3 of them would like to say straight away that I would like to become an astronaut. And 2 more will say that I would like to take a career in space sciences. And therefore, there is a need for the distinguished astronauts who are present here to be amongst the children, to be among the schools, and tell their stories, share their experiences. That will do a lot of good for the young generation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have to catch a flight, and therefore you will pardon me if I quickly sneak out of this room. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, we've had 14 people speak in an hour, which I think is not bad, actually. Thank you very much for keeping to the schedule. Are there any ideas that have not been addressed in this rich variety from the panelists that somebody would like to bring forward? Bill.
I'd just like to comment that at the conclusion of the moon program, a tremendous amount of human capital, much from NASA, but there was also international involvement, walked out the door and went elsewhere in industry. And the legacy of what people did and how they did it and why this was done is largely lost. It's going to happen again right now with the shuttle, and it's great that the full fuselage trainer is in Seattle, but the key part of this legacy is this thinking about what these machines did and why they were made to be that way. And I'm fearful that that is going to get lost too. And it may happen with International Space Station if we're not very careful. I've seen some of this same drain, this loss, in my experiences in Russia. So it's not just a US problem. My question to the panel is there an educational dimension to this? And if so, what do we do to capture this lost art?
I'd be glad to take that one on because it's been very direct for us. I think when we first competed for one of the orbiters and got the full fuselage trainer instead, we tried to convince ourselves really hard that we had gotten something better. And now I'm absolutely convinced of that because of the reaction that we've had from the folks at Johnson and from the folks in our own educational community about how to use it as an educational tool. You know, you won't just stand back and look at it. You'll be able to go inside of it and understand what all of you who trained on it did, what training to go to space was like, why you do it, what the hurdles are, why it's hard, what you learned from that process, and then what you need to do today. But working with the folks at Johnson, and I have to give George the credit for this, he was the first one to say to me, remember, it's not about the trainer, it's about the people and what they did. And so telling the story of what happened at Johnson Space Center and throughout, as I've learned over these last several days, throughout the world during that era, that benefited people directly and set the stage for what's going to happen next. That really is the story. And so that has come together from all the major museums that got orbiters have begun to realize that. And while they're worried about the building and how they're going to get it from the airport to the museum in Los Angeles and things like that, their gallery planners and educational folks have come together to understand it is your story, all of you who've created it to this point, and Alex's story in the future that's going to attract the public to get across to them this excitement that each one of us has described when you can actually engage people. When you get past the preconception that it's somehow over and say, but do you know what the space station's doing today? Did you know it's going overhead? Did you know this kind of research is going on and how it benefits you directly? People light up. Just one quick story. We had a small company in Seattle that Tom Jones is part of come and announce the other day they're going to go mine asteroids. You know, they're going to build a telescope and study near-Earth asteroids and figure out what they're made of and eventually turn that into a business. Well, the head of that company said in the presentation, I'm not taking applications today, but I would like to hear from people who want to change the world. He's had 2,400 young people in the workforce contact him, a fourth of whom have offered to work for him for free. So the excitement is still out there, and telling the people stories that really does re-engage the public. So we'll try to be the guardian, not let those stories that happen here at Johnson or anywhere else get lost.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think some of the policy issues, as Barbara was talking about, were really important. At Johnson Space Center, of course, we have a huge educational program. Space Sciences does a lot coming out of NASA headquarters. We have, of course, the ISS science. Judy's not here, but you know, they do a big Legos project and all this stuff on ISS. A lot of education on ISS. In fact, when we were down to just a few crew members, the one thing that we could do was education outreach because it didn't take too much time and too many supplies. So it's been continuously on ISS, at least from the American point of view, of doing K through 12, mostly middle school education. But I wanted to mention that in the Space and Life Sciences Directorate, we have what's called the NASA Human Health and Performance Center, NHHPC, and there are members here in the audience. And it's a collaboration with, and it is international because we have ESA participation. We have collaboration from industry, but from a lot of nonprofits, from the San Diego Zoo to Orion Quest to schools in South Carolina, to different universities and different nonprofits that are working in childhood education. We just completed a preliminary run of a competition, a challenge, so students could win the challenge. And we had some students from New York, from RPI Relations, and these are all middle school students, to South Carolina, to Michigan, to Texas, participating in this competition. It was an online competition. The output of the students was marvelous, and part of that I got to get to know a teacher, a middle school teacher in South Carolina, which I had never gotten to know. So the NASA Human Health and Performance Center is doing exactly what you're talking about, trying to bring almost an eclectic group of people together, and we're doing a lot of education and outreach because everybody wants to do this. And we used an asteroid competition as the base for this, but it's very nice to do. And as I said, this involves a lot of people, plus our local contractors, Wiley, USRA, participated in this, as well as organizations like NSBRI and Baylor and U of H. So it's been a wonderful experience to bring this together. And I have to tell you, you know, the first part of it was just a lot of talking. We didn't get much done. But then within the last 6 months, we've got to do this competition. And next year, we will do 2 competitions. And we did this almost, everybody just sort of contributed in kind activities. So there's a lot of education going on in ISS. Don't think there isn't. There's a lot of education going on, at least in the NASA community and lots of different places. There's a lot of education going on in the United States. People are very interested in working with different folks to do things that are related to space. So I think the interest is there. I think a lot of people, as we show with our little contest, are willing to spend some of their own time, money, and energy to work with kids to use the NASA as a system of STEM education. So I've been very impressed with the colleagues that I've worked with across the country, and it's a very doable. So if you want to do something like this, it mainly just takes time, energy, and a spirit of enthusiasm. As we were very successful, and we didn't even know we were going to be successful. We were very successful and are expanding the program. So it's delightful, and I think you all bring a different perspective to that, and I think that's been really helpful.
Thank you for that comment.
Could I come back on Bill's question, please?
Well, very short, because I've got one more question, and that's...
In answer to Bill's question about how we do it, one of the suggestions I would make is that people generally look to turn this problem on its head. That in fact out there is a need, and how can we use what we've got to answer that need? One need, for instance, and I get this data from Rice, is that in terms of different ethnic and subgroups of America, there isn't a massive difference between them in terms of educational performance in communication and language skills. The difference between successful groups and disenfranchised groups here in America is their ability and their engagement in mathematics and science. So the question is, yes, you've got the ISS, you've got the actual ability to go out and inspire. What processes can you bring to actually reach out into those communities that reject maths and science, and how can you focus on ensuring that you do it rather than we working together on a mismatch? So you start with the need and you tailor what we've got and the talents and skills and brilliant opportunities we've got to attack that need with the best possible educational and psychological processes we can bring to bear.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, just for the discussion, I mean, for the last 2 comments, there's a clear excitement when you talk through K-12. You stick Mike in a room, they don't even know I'm there. I mean, I just show him up and then I can walk away. I mean, the astronauts and the what NASA is doing, you travel the world with a NASA sticker and you get in every door. The education that NASA does is really, really good, and it's very diversified. Who you're not educating and who we all should educate is Congress. And that goes back to your previous comment, because if you think about, a lot of the time NASA is faced with having to justify why it's doing what it's doing. Who wants to put a man in the moon? What's the space station doing? And so a lot of the times they talk about in terms of spin-offs. We did LASIK surgery, we created the technologies for Tang or whatever, right? If Tang's a technology, I'm not sure it is. But the biggest spin-off of NASA, for me anyway, and as you can tell, I'm not a Native American here, but the biggest spin-off of NASA and the Apollo program and everything that came from that was the number of people who went into science and engineering. It's not a piece of technology, it's not heart pumps, it's the number of people who watched what was going on and said, I want to do that or something like it. That's what we need to do today, and the reason, you know, if we're going to have a human spaceflight program, Mike's already touched on this, we need to be pushing those buttons. And that starts from the top. We have a heavy launch vehicle to where? Nobody gets excited about building a bigger and better rocket. They get excited about why you're building a bigger and better rocket. What is it that what's the return on investment? The return on investment for a company like SpaceX is, can they make money? The return on investment for a government is what you do for your citizens. And that leadership is lacking across the board, across all stripes of Republican, Democrats, independents, whatever. I mean, Newt Gingrich tried to talk about colony in the moon, and look what happened. I think the education has to start there, and it has to lead into the inspiration, not because a particular politician wants to put a woman on Mars in 5 years, but because in trying to do that, there's a huge inspiration for the citizens that they serve, and I think that's where the education. And NASA's always in a response mode because they have to be. They're told what to do by Congress. Somehow the rest of us have to, who are not constrained, have to do more to turn that around on its head. So that would be my comment to the last two statements.
That's a good comment. Okay, final question with the mic, yeah.
I'm not sure that I can say anything after that. I think that was an excellent ending to our particular session. Thank
Carl,
you.
can I ask one final question?
You've got a mic
Short
too.
one.
All right.
There's been no discussion here about educating the parents. Every parent wants to know, how can I teach my child how to connect with their dreams? And I wonder, are we doing a good enough job? And this starts at an early age. It's often the parents who introduce the children to the heroes. And the heroes are, you know, sometimes it's an emotional connection, not necessarily an intellectual one. So it's starting, you know, at age 4, 5, 6. And certainly, you know, a lot of parents that I know ask me, what do we know about how to teach curiosity? And, you know, you think about everybody in this room. Why did you get into science? I submit it's probably the common denominator. It might not have been space originally. It's curiosity. Can we be doing a better job in this area? Anybody have any thoughts?
I'll respond by piling on to, I thought was a really good definitive ending comment, was that, you know, the question I saw in our little panel was, I know, how do we get more engineers and scientists? And in my 12 years working with NASA, I've never said, man, we just don't have enough engineers and scientists around here. We got plenty of them, and I mean, we need to keep that pipeline going. But I think we do a really good job of bringing folks into the community. What I think NASA is asking is sometimes the wrong question. That base of support goes way beyond engineers and scientists and doctors. You know, if you're asking, how do we get, you know, to borrow a line from a song, the poets, priests, and politicians on board with NASA as well. I mean, the idea is that, you know, NASA's job isn't to have a whole bunch of engineers and scientists sitting around. Our job is to go explore the solar system. I think it takes more than just engineers and scientists to go do that. It takes teachers, it takes parents, it takes songwriters, it takes janitors, it takes, you know, we were going to the moon, you know, that old saying, the guy pushing a broom wasn't just pushing a broom through the halls of, you know, mission control, he was putting people on the moon. I think an effort like that requires everybody, so you need to inspire more than just our budding technocrats, but get everybody else on board, and you need to reach them all and find out, and let them find their way how they're going to contribute. You know, I'm an engineer. I have no idea how somebody writing a song can help me, but I bet somebody who writes songs could tell you 101 ways how they could help me. Let them find their own way. Neil?
I got to answer his statement. We really do, because you just addressed something. We ran a contest this year under the aegis of the HRP, the Human Research Program. It was USRA that ran it. And it was a contest where we had actually had entrants from about 550 students from around the world. It was an art contest with the states. We never anticipated you'd get the response. You actually can treat the other side of the brain. You know, so you can actually get kids that want to express something out of the other side, and it's really fascinating. And I can tell you there are websites that I can provide and a URL for you. You can go see a couple of hundred of these entries. There were winners from all around the world. We had about 27, I think, or 28 countries that were participating. And it was done by approaching schools. The schools ran their own internal contests. They filtered those and they sent them to us. Okay, and then we had an external panel, about 75 people with art experience, to go ahead and judge these, rank them, and put them together. The kids got awards. We brought actually 5 or 6 of them to the United States and actually attended the HRP meeting, the international meeting that we had, not this past year, but the year before. And those were all displayed in continual slide type show. So, I mean, and it's absolutely, it's remarkable. I got about 5 or 6 of them that I keep. I printed, okay? They're in my place at my house. So you'd be astounded at the creativity and the thought that these kids can put into these things.
Thank you. Our leader has the microphone.
Yeah, we're doing another one. That's right. We were doing one on Jordan.
Enough.
That's no more ads.
George.
This is live.
But that's really critical. These folks are parents, but I wasn't joking when Mike talked. They're also voters. And so a broad, think of education. We got to inspire that next generation. We got to get their teachers and parents to understand why this is important in all of these countries if we really want enough public support to get it done.
I think science and engineering is fairly critical to the space program, but it's also critical to looking at alternate energy sources, looking at the environment. You need engineers and scientists. And if you look, is there a need out there? You just have to look at Houston, Texas. We have the 3rd largest school district in the United States here, and less than 50% of the students from that school district graduate from high school, let alone go to college, let alone go into engineering and science. In the state of Texas, less than 50% of the students in the state of Texas graduate from high school, let alone go into engineering and science, let alone go to college. So that's not just unique to Texas, it's unique across the country. So young people need to realize they need to stay in school, they need to understand that they need to go on to university, continue their education, and certainly if we're going to solve the problems that the world has to solve, we need these students going into engineering and science. It's the same problem within the UK. The enrollment in our universities today in engineering and science is going down. In the UK, they're eliminating physics departments and chemistry departments from universities because there's not enough students. So there's a critical need out there, and there's a major problem that this country and other countries around the world needs to solve.
Could I just say that it's not the same in China? In China, they graduate every year almost exactly the same number of engineers as we have students in any year group in the British Isles. So for every young person that is 16 years old in Britain, they have that exact number become engineers in China.
Okay, thank you for the comments. This has been a very rich session. I thank the panelists for this collection of ideas. I think our job in the working group that's coming up is to try and pull this together into some recommendations and maybe a vehicle for making those recommendations happen. Thank you all. Thank you, panel members.